You are listening to the Jag Bros podcast. We are three brothers. I'm Jack, along with my two brothers, JT and Joey. And yes, it is another episode after a Jaguars loss. We're going to break down the game in a little bit, and a little bit of a teaser. We're going to add in a special segment because we're going to talk about coaching candidates that we like for the Jaguars to potentially pursue towards the end of the episode. So stay with us for that. That's going to be a fun segment. But first, it's October 1st, September 2024. The Jaguars were 0-4, the only 0-4 team in the NFL. Last place. Was September the worst month of football in Jacksonville Jaguars franchise history?
It's not the worst football that I've ever seen them play. It's the worst feeling, I think, as a Jaguar because of the expectations that we had with this team, that they were a winning team. They were 9-8 2 years in a row. We didn't change that much on this roster, yet now all of a sudden they're 1-9, 1-10, I think. They're really bad. They just find a way to lose even when they're winning. This game was very similar to both the Browns game and Dolphins game. You had a chance to win this game. You're on the 1 yard line. You punch that in, we win. We go up by 10. We can't punch it in. Instead of Etienne fumbling it, we have Trevor not being able to get 1 yard, and we do a quarterback draw that everyone saw coming from a mile away. When Trevor Lawrence has never done a quarterback draw, I don't think ever, when we've actually been successful when he does his dumb Superman thing, but at least it works. Instead, you give Trevor Lawrence the ball 3 yards back, so now he has to gain 4 yards instead of being right under center. He doesn't hesitate and look for the hole to develop. He just runs straight into the center, gets stopped right away. When plays need to be made, this team that we have currently cannot and will not make the play that needs to be made.
So there are 5 stages of grief
that most Jaguar fans have been through before. I can confidently say I'm somewhere between depression and acceptance at this point. After game 1 against the Dolphins, well, hey, the Dolphins are going to be a playoff team. They were a playoff team last year. They're awesome. We'll definitely beat the Browns at home. They look trash. Denial. Next week, after we lose to the Browns, I absolutely lose my mind. I'm angry. I'm throwing things all like just so worked up. I was in the anger stage. Last week, somewhere between anger and bargaining. I still was very angry, but it felt like, hey, if we could do this, if we could make changes. But now, you know what? I'm just depressed. I'm in between depressed and acceptance. And Jack, back to your question, was that the worst month of Jaguar football? No, we've had worse months, if you can believe it or not, of actual performance under the Blaine Gabbert and Gus Bradley era. I was looking back, and we went back-to-back years where we didn't win a single game in September, losing on an average about 21 to 25 points a game. So in theory, those are worst months. This is absolutely the lowest moment I feel in Jaguars history. And here's the problem, is you have problems in all facets of the situation. Your head coach clearly has lost communication in the locker room. I mean, we have a segment later today. What head coach do you want for 2025? You have a quarterback who honestly is playing more like Daniel Jones every single week that you just paid $250 million to. So you're going to be stuck with him for at least another 4 years. And you have a GM who has made wrong decision after wrong decision. And oh, by the way, it showed up in the second half because we didn't have any depth at defensive end. Once we lost Josh Hines-Allen, I'm pretty sure Stroud could have played with a nightgown in this game too. No pass rush. And so it's extremely frustrating. I certainly would say this, of all the years I've been watching the Jaguars for more than 25 years, this is the lowest I feel like for the team. And I just feel no optimism as we sit at 0-4 in the 32nd ranked team in the NFL.
It may be recency bias, but I'm going to call this the worst month of Jaguars football because of what y'all just said. Because this was a season with such high expectations. I've said it several times on the pod. Look, every Jags fan has probably seen the clip too many times by this point. But when your owner hypes up your team right before the season, says this is the most talented Jacksonville Jaguars team, and to just lose lose, get blown out on Monday night primetime game where it should have been easily 60-something to 10, and then to have a must-win game and your team chokes it away again in the fourth quarter, can't move the ball. I think at like 15 yards of total offense in the fourth quarter. Even the Titans look better than us. The Panthers look better. Like all these teams that had no expectations, they're finding ways to actually win games. Not the Jaguars. We are 0-4. We are at the bottom. I said it a bunch, and people did not like it when I said it earlier in the offseason. I was like, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, you have to clean house. Well, guess what? You're 0-4, and only one team in NFL history has ever made the playoffs from 0-4. So that's why I think it's the worst month, because you're October 1st, and you're already saying that the season is done. No playoffs. We're talking about the draft October 1st. That is brutal.
What also no one seems to be talking about, the head scratching move at roster cutdowns. We had somewhat of a depth in Gibson, and then we just trade him away so that we have absolutely no edge depth. Everyone's like, oh, Armstead is going to be our end. Guess what? Armstead is no end at all. He is way too slow. I don't think he's even got nearly enough talent to be that good of a D tackle right now. He has been a terrible free agent signing. He's not played well, but yet he wants to play end. So yeah, the Jags just let him do whatever he wants. Roy Robertson Harris is a better defensive end
100%.
than Armstead is. And it's so frustrating to see that when we actually had somewhat decent depth as a third edge rusher, and we traded him away for a nothing 6th-round pick to the Seahawks.
Before you get too excited about Travis Gibson, who we traded away, he's not even been on the field the entire time in Seattle. So
I'm not getting excited, but it's at least some depth instead of Miles Cole, who is a 7th-round pick, or Yasir Abdullah, who is a small, more linebacker than edge guy. He was at least an edge guy that you could play. I'm not saying that he was good, and I'm not saying like this would change our season. I'm saying you at least had someone to put in his place, and now you have no one to put into his place. Now you have to take a D tackle and make him a D end, or you have to make an outside linebacker into a D end. You don't have an end anywhere on your roster now.
Armstead has been super bad, and we'll talk about that more in the defensive breakdown. Well, let's go ahead and just talk about the game itself. The Jaguars lose 20-24 in Houston to the Texans. We've already said it. You know, you guys have watched the game. This was a game that the Jaguars should have won. You know, probability statistic-wise, they were in the high 80% at one point to win the game late in the second half. But let's talk about offense. The Jaguars scored 20 points, but really only kind of 13 points because they got gifted the ball early in the first quarter with a fumble recovery on the 2-yard line. So we have to start about the one that's been pounded into the ground. Trevor Lawrence has not won a game in more than 300 days. What went wrong for Trevor on Sunday?
Everything. Well, I shouldn't say everything. Trevor looks like my golf game right now, where, hey, he's doing really well with short pass, immediate passes. My irons are doing really well, but if my irons are doing well, that means my driver stinks. And guess what? His long throws sucked. Overthrew, off target, not on the same page. His long throws were so bad, and it just seems like he can't put it together. I can't put together a perfect golf game. He can't put together a perfect football game. Something is always missing in the game, and he has to fix it. He's in a slump right now. We've seen that he's able to play better. End of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, 13-3, like he was playing very well. We know he has it in him. I'm not saying that he is a bust. I think he is in a massive slump, and something has to change to get yourself out of the slump. You got to bust that slump, Trevor. And if you're listening, Trevor, you have to change what you're doing. And honestly, cut your hair. Change something. Let's go back to buzz cut Trevor and get rid of these locks, because the locks are unlucky, and find a way to break the norm, get out of this rut, and get back to playing what you know how to play. Like, you're one of the best quarterbacks that has been here. Just play. You stop overthinking it.
It's Blaine Gabbert. Like ultimately, if you look at the production on the field, you look at what he has done
He's
and what
not
he has
Blaine
not.
Gabbert.
He
He's
is.
not.
He
No,
is.
Blaine Gabbert never had a successful streak ever.
The team around Blaine was horrible. This team is technically more talented than that 2013 or 2014 Jaguars team. But the reality is his production is very similar. I'm really curious to go do a side-by-side comparison right now, but it feels like he's running into sacks. It feels like anytime there's a clutch moment, he withers, whether it's a third down. Jacksonville was 4 of 12 again on third down. Horrible on third downs. And most of those times are third and mediums. And here's the other thing. Like he does nothing in the fourth quarter, which is exactly what we did against the Dolphins. You said we had a chance to win against Miami, and we absolutely did, Joey. But the reality is we look so bad in the fourth quarter every single game. 15 yards offensively is awful. The game against the Browns, you have the chance to win it. What do? You immediately get sacked. That's a Blaine Gabbert move. I half expect an interception more likely than a touchdown on a key drive in the fourth quarter by my quarterback. Like that's just the same vibes I got from Blaine. And so yeah, maybe he needs to cut his hair, Joey, to avoid that comparison right now. But the reality is he's lost 10 straight games. That's very Blaine Gabbert-esque. And like it's just terrible right now the way he's playing.
This is where Trevor Lawrence has just been stuck. You know, I said it after the Dolphins game, and Joey, you went after me. I think you said I had brain rot, but I said Trevor Lawrence in that game did not do enough to win that game for you. And this has just been a pattern. And yes, a lot of it falls on him. He just got paid an exorbitant amount of money. But it's also on the coach because pretty much every NFL analyst is saying right now, it's a confidence issue for Trevor. Whatever happened in 2023, whether it's the injuries or just not being able to win games at the end of the season that they needed to. Because yes, Joey, I agree with you. 2022 Trevor, like the Jaguars were all the hype. The Jaguars have this historic playoff comeback. They are competitive against the Chiefs, the Chiefs dynasty. Trevor Lawrence is 22 years old in his second year, getting rid of all that stuff from Urban Meyer, and he's in 6th place in his second year for MVP voting. And he takes a team to 8-3, first place in the AFC through 11 weeks of last year, and it's just fallen apart. And Doug Peterson takes no accountability. After the game, what does he say? Oh, well, there's no way my job is on the line. And he keeps pointing to the players. He says, well, we can't get out there and make the plays. It's not me. It's not Press Taylor. Well, at some point, you've got to make some changes. You can't keep saying, oh, we're going to make changes, and keep doing the same thing again and again and again and again. I said it a couple episodes ago, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, what do? We do the same things over and over again. And what do? We score about really 13 points, which has been our season average. We can't score more than 14 or 15 points in a game. And so this offense is messed up. The play calling is broken. Yes, it has been Trevor. He has been bad, but the coaching cannot stay the same because you're not going to trade Trevor. You're not going to get anything. And so coaching has to change. That's why we're going to get into potential head coaches at the end of the episode. This offense has no resilience. Ingram goes down and it falls apart. Last year it was Kirk that fell down and it falls apart. This team is weak. And it starts with the leadership. And so, yes, Trevor, but also coaching.
There's a Reddit clip right now that's going around some of Jaguars Twitter, and it's from Eagles Nation 11 4 years ago. And one of the main points on why they felt like they should fire Doug Peterson is the third point is the regression of Carson Wentz, who, by the way, actually was an MVP winner in the NFL. He says nothing has been done to try to change the play style or fix the mistakes that Carson was making. You never saw a coach talking to Wentz on the sidelines about a disappointing drive. You saw the same mistakes being made again and again and again. You heard Wentz say, I need to play better, but immediately follows by saying, I'm not changing the way I play. Eagles coaching staff seems to be content to letting Wentz suffer in silence. That may be partially a Carson problem, but it's clear Carson wasn't held accountable until he was ultimately benched midway through the season. And so like that, you could sub out Carson's name for Trevor Lawrence, and that's exactly 100%. The same situation we have right now.
You know what's crazy is that
It is.
Trevor Lawrence, for all of the, you feel like, oh, he may throw an interception or whatever. He only has one turnover through 4 games, where that's been his biggest problem going into this season. And so for him to clean all that up and still be 0-4 is just bad.
You can also tell that he's purposely holding it longer and everything so that he doesn't turn it over. I miss turnover Trevor if this is the Trevor that we're going to end up having. I'd rather you turn over the ball, but yet you can throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Well, he's only done that twice in his entire career or so. So like that picture of Trevor just doesn't happen very frequently.
Yeah, that's true. And also, you're so right on the development of these players, Jack. Like, everyone's pretty much regressed. If I was a coach right now, I'd go stick 2 ends and maybe even a guy up the middle, no blockers, and Trevor, work on being elusive. He looks like CJ Beathard out there trying to be elusive and get away from sacks, spinning into defensive players, being really slow, not looking down the field, trying to extend the play. You have your eyes down, just trying to make it back to the offensive line of scrimmage. It's so like he didn't look this bad before. His elusiveness is gone. He doesn't really look to even run the ball anymore. He's just looking to get rid of it or take the sack so he doesn't fumble.
So switching off of Trevor here and looking at the rest of the team. Look, the offensive production was not great. Running the ball was fine. We ran for over 150 yards. A lot of that came on Tank Bigsby's one big run, which Joey, you continue to be right about Tank Bigsby being good. We lost the time possession battle, which I think is the secret to any type of success Doug Peterson has. He has to win the time of possession battle or the turnover battle. And here's the other thing that I'll say, and it's so interesting. So all we heard about last week on Twitter is all these rumors about Christian Kirk potentially being shopped around and seeing if the Steelers are interested or other teams are interested in him. He's in his final year of his contract, etc. What do the Jaguars do? The very first 4 plays were all designed exactly for Christian Kirk. To me, that is a statement. That is a statement saying the coaching staff and the players are, again, not at all on the same page as the front office. That is a middle finger to Trent Baalke saying, you know what? You want to trade this guy? We're going to make him the centerpiece of the offense. I'm not saying one is necessarily right or wrong in this situation, but it's so clear they all hate each other. And that is ultimately part of the issue. Shad Khan has to pick a side at this point or fire them both, because the side you've already picked is Trevor. And so get rid of Baalke and or get rid of Doug, but you cannot allow, we're not going to have any type of success, and certainly not sustained success, until everybody's on the same page.
You're right, JT, on this whole strife, and you can see that this team doesn't play as a team. And you want to know what the secret sauce was to 2022? Was that team felt like a family. They were talking and looked like they fought for each other. Every comeback was bringing each other up. When someone went down, there was someone talking to them, bringing them up, saying, it's okay. Okay, what's next? Like, they were a team and a family, and that has lost. I told you last year they needed to go to London and get that team camaraderie, and they did it for a little bit. They became a team. They were winning right after London. That's exactly what they needed to re-spark it. And guess what? They lost it somewhere last year, and they've not picked it back up. This is not a team that plays together. This is not a team that is a family. They just look sporadic. They look out of sync. Nothing about it is together, and it starts with the coaches and general management and everything not being on the same page. No one's on the same page, which means that this is not a team. It's just a bunch of players out there who are trying to make plays, but it's not a team.
The locker room is lost. Doug has lost the locker room, and that is his only job. Like, his only job at this point is to make sure this team plays in a cohesive manner, because he said afterwards, for the first time in the 2024 season, he is not the one calling the plays on offense. That's Press Taylor, and he says he's not going to take the headset back as he thought Press called it a good game. That was only on the players and only on the execution, which means your only job is to make sure this team plays well enough. And this is why it's so frustrating because this was a game where you did have players make some plays. Unlike the Bills game where everyone played terrible, you had some people play well. In fact, the offensive line actually played extremely well on Sunday. They gave up 1 sack and only 3 pressures. Actually, the offensive line only gave up 1 pressure from Anton Harrison. The other 2 were ETN and Brenton Strange. And you're running the ball well. You ran the ball for 6.6 yards per carry. Yes, some of that was inflated with a great tank run, but you were still moving the ball on the ground, which the Jaguars have not done that well in. But the team can't get it together. Gabe Davis drops a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence misses passes. The defense, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, looks horrible in the first half and just gets run over. Ronald Darby, is getting burnt every play by Nico Collins. And so this team can't play together. You have some great plays like BTJ going 6 catches, 86 yards, a touchdown. He's on pace right now to crush 1,000 yards. He looks like every bit of a wide receiver 1 potential in Jacksonville, but it doesn't matter because you have some guys play well and everyone else play terrible, and they're not playing together, and that is solely on Doug Peterson. And he doesn't change. That's another one of those points in that Reddit that's going around from the Eagles. I think it's point number 1 and number 2, that they just don't make any changes. The NFL is a week-to-week league where to game plan against the Jaguars is so easy right now.
Jack, you pointed out something funny, that Doug Peterson finally said who's calling the plays after this game. And I believe the only reason he said that was because this is the only game in a very long time that we didn't lose because of play calling. This is the only time that I could actually say the play calling was okay up until the very last drive. Throwing the ball twice, taking only 40 seconds off when you're at 4 minutes and you just need to get 2 first downs pretty much for them to start using their timeouts and milk the clock, but you throw it twice, giving them 2 free timeouts. Like, that was bad play calling, but other than that, it was play called pretty well. And yet that's the only game that Doug is willing to say that press called the plays, and it's because he finally did an okay job. It's comical how, he did well. I can finally tell you now that he's the one doing the play calls. But when it's really bad, I don't know who's doing the play calls. It doesn't really matter.
Zero accountability.
So we started to see this dissension back in December of a little bit of this Doug versus Trent, and it's only gotten worse. My hunch is what we talked about at the end of last year, I think is pretty much exactly how it went down. Shad Khan said, we can't not make the playoffs. Decide amongst yourselves who you're going to fire. I bet Trent said you have to fire Press Taylor. The issue was the offense. They didn't want to fire Press, so they fired Caldwell. And look, it's only gotten worse because I think there's a lot of players on that defense that liked Caldwell. And oh, by the way, he seems to be a lot better of a defensive coordinator than Ryan Nielsen was. And this was some of the questions that I had when we originally hired him. It's not like he's this savant defensive guy. He had some success at Atlanta, but in a lot of the metrics, Jacksonville was better. And he's historically known as a guy who doesn't get a lot of turnovers. And you mix that in with a regression from our pass rush, it's mind numbing how bad the defense plays on a down-to-down basis. And you'd say, well, GT, they only gave up 17 points. They got 24 points, 17 there for the majority of that game. But here it is again. Texans were above 50% on 3rd down conversions again. The one thing they wanted to do was continue to throw the ball to Nico Collins. And we said, sure, how about let's continue to leave him open as he goes 12 for 151. And oh, by the way, we got gashed again by a running back out of the backfield, Dare Ogunwuemble, going 4 for 47 and a touchdown, including the game-winning touchdown against us, where we continue to not be able to cover anybody out of the backfield coming out in the passing game.
Well, it's crazy actually how badly this defense is coached. You look at Josh Allen's percentage against man versus zone. He is an incredible quarterback against man, not very good against zone. What do we do pretty much the entire game against the Bills? We run man. He lights us up, tears us apart. And then it switches to now CJ Stroud is much better against zone than he is man. There's a ton of statistics to prove this. And then we run zone at the beginning of the game and he picks us apart. It wasn't until we switched to man in the second half that we actually started shutting him down. If we had done that at the beginning of the game, then this would have been a completely different score, I think, because our defense was so poorly coached at the beginning of this game that we are letting the quarterback do what he wants. We are giving him, oh, you like zone? Let's run zone. Oh, you like man? Let's run man. Instead of trying to actually do the opposite of what they like to do. And then one thing I really didn't like about Mike Caldwell was we were playing way too far off the ball. The cornerbacks were 10 yards off, and then the safeties were 30 yards back. We're still doing that. The linebackers are lined up too far back. The cornerbacks are playing up, but the safeties are about 40 yards back. Oh my goodness, they're not even on the TV screen. They're so far back. That's why they can dump it off and then run for another 5 yards. It's 3rd down and 18. There's not a soul in sight because they're all way far back and trying to cover the 18-yard line. No, how about someone crash? And where's this aggressive defense that Ryan Nielsen has? Because this is a soft defense, very soft. The only person that was out there being aggressive, Ventrell Miller. I hated that pick last year. I was very wrong on Ventrell Miller. He's the best linebacker out there. Is playing better than Devin Lloyd, plays better than Chad Muma. He's on par with Foye Lucan. Lucan's smarter, but Ventrell Miller was up there blowing through gaps. He may have made some mistakes, but he was going at it fast and he laid the wood. He plays very similar to Monteric Brown or Buster Brown, who also runs up there and makes a tackle and sticks his nose in there and actually looks like he wants to play. The rest of the defense can go sit on the bench.
Yeah, Joey, that's well said. Vontrell Miller played well, but just like Monteric Brown, both of them are limited in what they can do. Vontrell, again, a Gator fan here. Like, I loved him as a person. I never thought he was a complete NFL linebacker. He played well on Sunday, that's for sure. But he has some severe deficiencies, especially being able to cover backs. But he's fine at stopping the run, and I think we saw that. And to your point, Joey, he really does care. He was the heart and soul of the Gator defense that particular season. And it's evident in how he plays compared to some of these other guys.
He looks better than Devin Lloyd, who we traded up for. Devin Lloyd also has problems covering anybody.
Yeah.
When have you ever seen Lloyd not making a tackle that was 6 yards down the field?
Yeah, I don't understand how Pro Football Focus continually rates Devin Lloyd our best player, because I just never see it on the field.
To be fair, Devin Lloyd did not play on Sunday, so not 100% sure why we're bashing him so hard when he did
because
not play.
he plays.
I'm bashing him because when he is on the field, you don't even see him.
Exactly.
Exactly.
100%, Joey. You're spot on.
Makes no tackles for losses. He never rushes when all we do is talk about, we think Devin Lloyd can rush, but we don't ever actually use him for rushing. He is constantly, the only time I see him is because he's 2 yards behind the tight end who he's supposed to be covering, and they're making the catch for the first down. That's the only time I see 33 is when he makes a tackle 6 yards down the field, not 6 yards behind the line.
Anyways, again, Devin Lloyd did not play on Sunday. So the defense that did play on Sunday against the Texans, and this is back to my point of the team doesn't play together as a unit, because the defense was horrible in the first half, and then all of a sudden they flip a switch. They make adjustments. They force the Texans to punt over and over and over again in the second half, which was great. They finally realized, hey, Darby cannot cover Nico Collins, and that is a terrible matchup. Darby has been slow, and another bad free agent pickup so far. Cisco got cooked every time he was ever in coverage. I'm glad we've not paid him yet. But Monteric Brown did a very good job, and the defense finally started to make plays. Well, what does the offense do? They can't score. They can't move the ball. They can't convert. And so, of course, the defense, you knew as soon as C.J. Stroud and the Texans got the chance with a few minutes to go and C.J. Stroud had the ball, you're like, oh, it's over. And it's the opposite. Every time the offense for the Jaguars gets the ball late in the fourth quarter, you're like, well, here goes a 3-and-out. Here goes a sack. Here goes a bad play. C.J. Stroud, hats off to the Texans. They have gone from one of the worst teams in the NFL to a very, very good franchise, and a lot of that has to do with C.J. Stroud going 27 for 40, 345 yards, 2 touchdowns. And it's just the difference of a team that plays together, a team that finds a way to win, a team that overcame 12 penalties for almost 100 yards, and they still found a way to win. And they were missing a ton of players. through injuries. Joe Mixon was not available, and a bunch of other guys for the Texans as well. So this is a team that finds a way to win, and the Jaguars are a team that finds a way over and over to lose.
Oh, the Houston Texans wanted us to win. CJ Stroud didn't play that great. He also had overthrows and missed touchdowns, just like Trevor Lawrence. And they also had tons of penalties. They had a muffed punt and gave us a touchdown. They wanted us to win, yet no one is willing to go grab it and make a play and care about this team. We want to talk about Cisco. What a regression, going from an almost Pro Bowl-esque type safety, I believe, with Mike Caldwell. Now he looks fat, lazy. I have not seen him make one sort of big hit. He is 40 yards down the field. He is so terrible. Antonio Johnson looked crummy. I want Wingard, and Gibson can't get off his suspension soon enough, who we just picked up at the beginning of the year, because these two safeties below, they are trash safeties, and they need to change. Everyone who's not giving effort needs to sit. I don't care if it's backups. Give me people who play like Monteric Brown and Ventrell Miller who actually care. You may not get to the playoffs, but you'll actually win a game. With this team, we will not win a game. We will go 0-17 this season if we keep playing with these lackluster. Get some people who are willing to actually fight for this team and get mad.
I was going to say, if you're going to start the players that are giving it their all, you may only have 4 or 5 Jaguars out on the field.
Oh, go to the practice squad. There's players out there who want to play. This team obviously doesn't. Cisco needs to sit down and get on Weight Watchers. Antonio Johnson has his head spinning around constantly. He has no idea what's going on. Pull him. Darby, maybe one of the worst signings, switching from Darius Williams, who was an incredible cornerback, who was super good. And everyone's like, oh, we have a set corner there. No, let's get rid of him and then sign this garbage guy. Let's also get Eric Armstead, and what he's very known for and very good at, D-tackle. You don't have to play D-tackle. Go play D-end, where you are 30 years old, too slow, and never played that position. I'm sure that will happen. No, he looks terrible out there. Devon Hamilton, we paid him a bunch of money saying that he was going to be good. He's nowhere to be found ever. It's just get all those people off the field now. And all this lackluster effort and play comes on the coaching. You need to realize that this player is not giving it at all and figure out either to pull him or figure out how to get it out of him. It is on the coaching to get these players set straight, and no one is being held accountable. It is the coaching who is at fault.
Yeah, I think it's time to start looking at coaches. And look, it will only continue to monitor this as 2024 unfolds. But if we were to just put together one dream name for us, who would it be? For me, I'm going to go Lincoln Riley. I think it's pretty clear based on the vibes in USC, he's not having a great time, but the dude is an offensive genius. He's taken quarterbacks that are worse than Trevor and made them look incredible. I mean, you look in the NFL, you see Kyler, you see Baker, you see a lot of other Caleb Williams. You see a lot of guys that have had influence by Lincoln Riley. I think it's so critical if you go ahead coach to start on the offensive side of the ball, because if you have a great defensive coach, what happens is you could find a good offensive coordinator, but then that offensive coordinator will eventually get plucked. Defensive coordinators could theoretically stay a few years in a row. Look at the Chiefs, look at some of these other places that have had a really good defensive coordinator for a long time. So that's why I think offensive-minded head coach makes the most sense to me. And I would love Lincoln Riley. I think he'll be a hot name. I think he'll be somebody that can get the most out of Trevor Lawrence and bring really a new, fresh identity and energy to this team.
I like Lincoln Riley a lot. I saw his play a lot. Went to Baylor, huge Baylor fan, so saw him in the Big 12 a ton. I respect Lincoln Riley a lot, and I think Trevor would thrive in a more college-style offense, more spread, more throwing it around than a pro-style under center offense, which we're trying to peg him into something that I don't think he is. I think he is a much more college quarterback than he is a pro-style quarterback. So I do like that, but I don't think Lincoln Riley is a great head coach. I would love to see him brought in as an offensive coordinator. And then I know you said you don't like defensive coordinators as the head coach, JT, but someone who is just an absolute great coach and is able to get the most out of not very talented players, I believe, is the Chiefs defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo. That is not that talented of a defense other than Chris Jones. And he is able to make them so much better. They're one of the best defense constantly. They used to be one of the worst defenses, the Chiefs were, and now they are locked down. It is so tough to play against them. They hit hard, they care, they play as a team, and they're so well coached. Every time you play the Chiefs, you're ready for what you want to do, and they're going to shut it down. It's so well coached. He deserves, I think, to be a head coach because of the way he coaches, and I would love to see him as the head Jaguars, and then bring one of your coordinators as your defensive coordinator, because I don't want to see Ryan Nielsen anymore. Maybe bring in the defensive back coordinator from the Chiefs, or the defensive line. Both of those are very, very good with not so great talent. Bring that to Jacksonville, please.
And here's the reason we're having this conversation. Twofold. One, because the Jaguars have already missed the mark of expectations. We were on the podcast months ago leading up, and just this was a team, like Shad Khan said, that we thought was really good. All of us had them going double-digit wins. That is a pipe dream now. The playoffs are a pipe dream now. And so there's been 5 head coaches in Shad Khan's tenure as owner for the Jaguars. 2 of them have been fired midseason. So if the Jaguars go lose at home against the Colts and then play poorly in London, there's a possibility, right, that he's not coming back from the UK in the sense of that he would no longer be the coach. I don't think it would happen that quick, but Jags fans are mad. Shad Khan is going to be mad when you go out and spend that much money in the offseason and don't make it. Well, the second reason we want to talk about too is because, hey, we love Jags fans and we're diehard Jags fans, and this is what everyone is talking about. And so I'm going to pick the really popular name. I don't know, man. I wish in my Jags teal lens glasses say, hey, it could happen. But Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Lions, he's a guy who has already had in the past 2 years several head coaching interviews, and he's pulled himself and clearly looking for the right position. But he has turned that Lions offense around along with some very, very good drafting. I mean, they just dropped 42 points last night on Monday Night Football. They know how to move the ball. He is getting way more out of Jared Goff than I think any of us really thought possible. And so I like that. But really, I'm just ready, whether it is Ben Johnson, whether it is Spagnuolo. I think the Jaguars need to make a move where you're getting a guy from a winning team, a team that knows how to find a way to win games, bring in new leadership, bring in new culture, bring in new DNA. So at first I was like, I don't know about a defense guy, but man, bringing someone from the Chiefs, Joey, with a winning DNA, man, oh man, would that change so much about the Jaguars, change about the team. There'd be accountability because he would come in and say, hey, the expectation is a championship level. The expectation is we are going to play the best level of the league. And so whether it is Ben Johnson, whether it is Spagnuolo, or whether it is Riley, like someone has got to come in and change the whole DNA, the whole leadership, the whole accountability from the staff and from the players in Jacksonville. And so we're going to tweet this out too, but drop your thoughts as well, Jags fans, on who you want in Jacksonville.
Yeah, the whole DNA, the leadership and coaches that we have now is too toxic. Whoever even if we plug and play right now, it would just be a Band-Aid. There's something wrong in the DNA of this whole core of coaches and leadership. It's just got to go. You got to wipe it all out. You got to cut it out like a cancer that it is before it grows and festers. You're not going to be able to put a Band-Aid on this one. You just got to dig the roots out and get rid of it, because this whole team, I think, is better than we are being given. I think a different style coach and a different style of team will bring it out of these players.
Speaking of throwing a Band-Aid on a serious wound, I don't know if you saw this. This made me laugh. And hey, Jags fans, we need a little a little laughter, but I saw this on Twitter this week because, of course, the Jaguars, they're unveiling their throwback jerseys in this home game against the Colts. And someone retweeted that it was just like throwing a piece of duct tape on a giant tank of water that is clearly about to explode. And so the Jaguars are ready for something new, something different in Jacksonville. And I said that I'm going to keep giving my Jags villain quote each week until the Jaguars win. And so this one, shout out to our cousin Jansen. He said, you got to quote Bane as is and say, hey, Jags fans, we were born in the dark, molded in the dark. Unfortunately, we know too much about losing, and it is time to step into the light, bring a new era into Jacksonville. Something's got to change, and Jags fans are ready for a big change in Jacksonville.
Absolutely. And I still remember when Doug first came in, what really turned it around was all this talk about culture. That's gone. It's obviously that he has given up. He's not trying to imprint a new culture, or his culture hasn't worked. I don't know. Whatever it is, you just got to clean house. Even if they're able to go in and win a couple games, get to 6 wins or anything, I don't care. He's not it. This team doesn't rally around him. His culture ideas have been tossed aside. It just has to go. And we're going to go ahead and end this podcast. We'll get to the Colts game and break that down a little bit. But until then, we're going to end this podcast as we always do with this losing streak right now.
Boo.